very important local race. Obviously, we thank the candidates for taking the time to be here. I also want to thank our co-sponsors, the Dixon Area Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dixon Public Schools, the Lee County Republican Central Committee, and Sauk Valley Media. We also thank WIXN Radio that's broadcasting this live and live streaming it on its website. Just a little bit about the format you can expect tonight. The candidates have drawn lots. They'll go from your left to right to do it. Each will get a 2-minute opening statement. We'll then do questions that will be asked by our co-moderators, and they'll each have 2 minutes to answer the questions. So you know, the questions were submitted to the moderators by a number of folks and our sponsors, the Bar Association, a lot of folks at the Chamber, and of course our friends at Sauk Valley Media. And Judge Payne, so it's his fault, he selected the questions that will be asked, so we know that they'll be fair.
Again, we'll begin with, by previous assignment, Mr. Klahn. Mr. Klahn.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Klahn. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak to you here tonight, introduce myself, and tell you why I'm the best candidate to be the next Lee County State's Attorney. I grew up not far away in the small town of Comanche, Iowa. I attended the University of Iowa for my undergraduate education, worked 3 years in the private sector, and thereafter graduated for Creighton University School of Law. At Creighton, I was afforded many great opportunities, including, as a law student, performing jury trials and successfully arguing before the Nebraska State Supreme Court as a senior certified law clerk. Upon passing the Illinois bar, I took my first job in private practice right here in the Sauk Valley area at a high-volume private firm that focuses primarily or almost entirely on litigation. The day I swore in as attorney is also the day that I met my wife, Elizabeth Shaw, an attorney at Warbury, Payson Johnson, Dixon native, and former Petunia Festival queen. We were engaged and married at St. Patrick's Church here in Dixon, as well as our 2 daughters, Gabrielle and Gianna, were born at KSB Hospital. I had many great experiences working in private practice and learned a diverse areas of law. However, my passion was always to be a prosecutor. That passion led me here to Lee County. For the last 3.5 years, I've worked in the Lee County State's Attorney's Office and currently serve as the First Assistant State's Attorney. My duties include not only helping manage the office, but I am the lead civil attorney for the county and primary felony prosecutor on major cases. I am proud to be a part of the great law enforcement team that we've created here in Lee County. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for the sponsors and organizers of this event.
I want to thank everyone for being here. My name is Mike Downey. I'm running for State's Attorney here in Lee County. The reason I'm running is that I feel the office needs not only an experienced trial attorney to run the office, but someone who's committed to Lee County. I was born in Lee County and live in Lee County. I am married and have 4 children, all of whom attended local schools. I've been an attorney for over 32 years. When I graduated from law school, my first job was as an assistant state's attorney here in Lee County. This is the same job my opponents hold, although in different counties. I've been prior to becoming an attorney, I was a police officer for almost 8 years. I've investigated all types of crimes, and during the past years, after being a prosecutor for a few years, I entered private practice here in Lee County and have been in private practice ever since. I've handled cases in state, federal, and appellate courts. In approximately 1989, I was offered a job as an assistant public defender, and I took that. Subsequent to that, I was placed in the position of guardian ad litem here in Lee County, and as guardian ad litem, I represent children who have either been abused or neglected, and I've represented, and then obviously also charged with crimes. I have thus been employed by Lee County since that time. I feel that if you look at the total time that I've been employed by Lee County, it's been close to 30 years. I believe that Lee County is I'm committed to Lee County, and I live here, and I believe it should be a safe place to live, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
And I too would like to thank our sponsors, that being the Lee County Bar Association, the Dixon Area Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dixon Public Schools, Lee County Republican Central Committee, WIXN, and Sauk Valley Media. And I'd also like to give a good round of applause to Doug Lee, who basically set this thing up. So it's because of Mr. Lee and the President of the Bar Association that we're here tonight. My name is Bill Brozovich. I want to be the State's Attorney of Lee County. I myself have been a prosecutor for over 20 years. I have prosecuted everything from all different types of crime, from felonies to misdemeanors to DUIs to traffics to ordinance violations. And when I mean by prosecuting, I'm doing case reviews, meeting with victims, setting up matters for trials, establishing pleas, and things of that nature. In addition, I've also been the Assistant City Attorneys for the cities of Dixon, Franklin Grove, and Paw Paw, doing ordinance violations, such things as dog running at large and things of that nature. In addition, I'm also currently the legal counsel for the Dixon Park District, advising that board as well. I feel I'm the most qualified prosecutor, as this is my job, this is my career. I have chosen to be a prosecutor and have done so for the past 20 plus years, serving the community and in fact trying to make a community safer for people to live in. In addition to prosecuting crimes, it's important that the state's attorney also is involved in advising the county departments, advising the county board. I've also had experience in that capacity as well. The bottom line is, I think of all my colleagues as well, we want to keep Lee County safe, and I believe I'm the person to do that. Thank you. First question. Aside from prosecuting individuals charged with crimes, how would you summarize the most important functions of the state's attorney's office? Mr. Klahn, we'll begin with you.
Beyond prosecuting just crimes, I would say that the chief functions would be advising the county board and handling civil-related matters for the county. That is where the second half or second most important thing you're probably going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Certainly, major crimes and things that threaten public safety will always be the most immediate. The duties and powers of the state's attorney are set forth by statute in the county's code. So that gives us a roadmap of what is expected of us and what we are required to do and what we have the power to do. Having 24 county board members and working for the past over three years without a county administrator, it brings about many unique challenges for a state's attorney's office. You really need to stay ahead of the game, going to committees and being present so the county board members, department heads, and other county employees know they can rely upon you on a consistent basis. That's exactly what I've done here. I've not only handled all areas in the criminal prosecution section, I've been the chief civil attorney for the county since I started here in December of 2012. In addition to that, we do have a prison here in Lee County, a mental health wing at KSB Hospital. So we do handle matters of involuntary committal and things of that nature. But you're going to handle a diverse amount of legal areas as state's attorney. And you need to be able to keep your head on a swivel because on any given day, you might be working on a homicide case, a zoning matter, or a labor matter for the county. We have 5 collective bargaining units, so there's 5 different contracts to interpret as well. That is why, because of my experiences over the last 3.5 years, I am the best candidate to be the next Lee County State's Attorney.
First of all the parts of the state's attorney's office are important. Obviously, the main part of the state's attorney's office is prosecution of criminal defendants. But if you take that away, when I say away, what I'm referring to, if you're going to talk about that, what you are going to look at is, number one, running the office. You have to be cognizant of the fact that we have limited resources. So as far as the office is concerned, you have to have a qualified candidate, an experienced candidate, to run that office. I've been running my office, my own private office, for close to 30 years now. So obviously I have that experience. So that's one of the areas. The second area is obviously dealing with the county boards, Mr. Klahn has indicated. That's an important function. And again, all the functions of the state's attorney's office is very important. I've had years of experience and dealing with private practice, dealing with corporate clients and things of that nature. And in fact, when I was an assistant state's attorney, I also advised the county board and things of that nature. So I have that experience. Third thing is juvenile court. Now, although you have criminal defendants as far as children, you also have the civil side. Juvenile court is extremely important. You're dealing with abuse and neglect, and obviously you have to look at that from the perspective of dealing effectively with that. And for the past 24 years, I've been guardian ad litem here in Linn County, so obviously I have experience from that area. And again, all the areas of the state's attorney's office is very important, but those three areas I think you have to look at, other than criminal prosecution. And obviously I believe I'm the person to run the office. Thank you.
Thank you. All the duties of the state's attorney's office are very important. Aside from prosecuting, we have to advise the county board. We have to be their legal voice, so to speak. County board members will contact us, call us with questions and concerns. It is our duty to advise them. In addition to that, we also have to advise the multiple county departments, such as the circuit clerk, the county clerk, the highway division, and things of that nature. That's also very important. In representing these departments, we may have to take into account negotiating contracts, negotiating labor issues, and things of that nature. I have been involved in that as well for the past 20 plus years. In addition to working with the county board and the divisions, or the department chairs, another critical function of the state's attorney's office is working close with law enforcement. We have to be involved with the law enforcement at the initial stages of the investigation, during the trial, and perhaps afterwards. A critical part of the state's attorney's office, which people don't realize, is working with victims of crime, their families, and witnesses. When a person is violated, so to speak, their house has been broken into, their car has been broken into, we have to sit down with that victim and talk to that person, be compassionate. We have to be understanding for their needs and things of that nature. The bottom line is all parts of the state's attorney's office are important, and I tend to devote a lot of time and my energies to all aspects of the duties of the state's attorney's office. Thank you.
One of the many reasons given by Lee County for the need for a new jail facility is the number of inmates being housed longer because of a backlog of court cases. Recognizing the need to protect constitutional rights, what could you and would you do as a state's attorney to make the processing of cases more efficient? Mr. Downey.
Well, part of my campaign has been to say to everyone that we have to reduce this massive backlog of cases. We have cases that have been languishing for years. They've been around for a long time. Obviously, from my perspective, it's my intent to attack those, plain and simple. As far as the jail population, and I'll let the sheriff address this, but I'm not sure if the backlog is the problem there, it's the facility itself. Having said that, it's my intent that if I'm elected state's attorney that I will intend to work cases, and that means work them not only from the beginning, but all the way through trial. So that's number one. Number two, I have a plan as far as also attacking it, as far as possibly getting outside counsel who would be, no cost to the county, come in and assist in dealing with those cases. So the bottom line is, you have to attack that backlog, you have to resolve those cases, and if you don't, obviously it's not fair to the defendants, it's not fair to the public, it's not fair to the victims of crime, it's not fair to anyone. You have to resolve those cases, and I intend to do that. Thank you.
Well, the jail overcrowding and the jail capacity is similar issues. However, as state's attorney, I believe the way I will help resolve that problem is an initial evaluation of each case. When a case comes in, we look at the case. Is this a case that needs to be prosecuted? Sometimes it's better not to prosecute. Sometimes we don't want to make people victims. But the bottom line is if a person is in fact guilty or has been committed a crime, initially we look at, is it rehabilitation or is punishment the goal? Then we also look at the facts on how we're going to resolve the case. If we have that plan already made when the case comes in, it will lead to a quicker resolution. For example, if you've got a case in which somebody's mentally ill, perhaps we get them into mental health court. Perhaps we resolve that issue sooner than later. You've got to have a plan when these cases come in. You work with victims, you work with the police, but you have to look at the case and move them quickly. A lot of times cases cannot be resolved quickly. For example, on the prosecuting side, we're looking to get DNA evidence. That takes time from the state crime lab. Sometimes the defense has issues. Maybe they've got witness issues. Perhaps they may have mental health issues as well, and it delays the case. But as a prosecutor, we need to move the cases quickly. The bottom line is, as we all know, justice delayed is justice denied. Thank you.
The issue of cases not moving fast enough is an issue that every county and every state faces across our country. With respect to the jail population right now, our jail is not overcrowded. I believe right now we have somewhere between 32 or 33 inmates. What we found out with the jail was we thought we had a 66-person capacity jail, and we came in for inspection, and it turns out to meet the jail standards, we only have a 40 capacity person jail. Throughout the last years, we've kept the jail population relatively small, somewhere usually in between the 30s, 40s, to low 50s. But with respect to moving cases, it really depends upon the case. We always need to work to get better. With regards to the numbers, in the prior administration over 4 years, the average number of felony cases closed was 264. Now, in one of those years, there was a high outlier of 309 cases. Another year, there was 233 cases. With regards to the last 3 years, the average has been 249 cases. But you have to look at the collaboration between our law enforcement agencies and the state's attorney's office. We're using unprecedented community-based policing and prosecutions with our expansion of our alternative courts and the Safe Passage Initiative. Instead of putting people in jail in that revolving door of the criminal justice system, we're sending them to get treatment and deal with drug issues. Now, when it's specific to victims' cases, we need to try and move these cases as quickly as we can. However, it's been my experience in working hand in hand with victims, timing can be everything. Sometimes when you deal with a victim, they're not ready to go and testify. So you don't necessarily want to push a case if there's not a speedy trial demand. We also all know about the decrease in state resources. We have a backlog with the lab. Thank you.
Recognizing the need for all office holders to be good stewards of public funds, what efficiencies would you create in the state's attorney's office that would benefit taxpayers? Mr. Brozovich.
As we all know, right now in our situation, ours being the United States, we have limited funds for federal dollars, state dollars, and county dollars. As a state's attorney, the state's attorney's job is also to be a good steward of the public's money. Now, how would that be? I have a plan to be very efficient with resolving cases, efficient as to looking at everything from supplies, personnel, and things of that nature. In addition, we also have to look to the funds available for the resolution of our cases. Perhaps some people need treatment. Is that treatment available? And who's going to pay for that treatment? The taxpayers are taxed to the hilt in county level, state level, and federal level. As a state's attorney, I think it's critical to be a good steward of the county's money. As your state's attorney, I will take that very seriously. Many of you who know me that I'm tight. There's no question about it. I would treat that office as my own, as being tight. Yes, there are some things we need to spend money on. For example, I think it's appropriate to spend money on appropriate treatment on some cases, for some defendants, because if we cure them in the early stages, then we won't have problems in the future. That's specifically important in juvenile cases. We want to rehabilitate the juvenile offenders so they don't become adult offenders and become dregs on society. But the bottom line is, I will look at all aspects of the state's attorney's office, from efficiency to personnel and to the programs that we would like to institute to help keeping our community safe. Thank you.
The office of the state's attorney is of a public servant. It's a privilege that needs to be earned, and you never stop earning it. Part of that is being fiscally responsible. You have to look at your resources and be able to allocate them in the proper places. We've experienced a large amount of turnover in the office with assistants, either moving on to different positions or deciding to take a part-time job instead of a full-time. Recently, our staff was reduced to 4 full-time assistants and 1 part-time assistant to 4 full-time assistants. That is going to see a significant reduction in the amount that the county is spending on assistant state's attorneys. However, we have many complex prosecutions to do this year. And that means we're going to be spending more money on contractual services with experts. So as state's attorney, you have to see what your needs are and be able to strategize and allocate those resources where necessary. Our alternative courts, though, have shown great promise in reducing costs to the taxpayer. If you look at it, if someone is successful through a drug court program or other alternative court, instead of going to prison, that ultimately saves the taxpayer between $26,000 and $30,000 a year. With respect to the state's attorney's office, by being more aggressive with asset forfeiture, we can take money that is legally seized from drug dealers and put it towards the important things in the office, whether that is purchasing new technology or putting it towards our training, and that way we can reduce those expenses. For the last 3 years, we've been incredibly aggressive with law enforcement and our collaboration on these asset forfeitures, and it is extremely beneficial to the county and the taxpayer.
Well, when you're looking at fiscal responsibility, and again, I'm going to go back to my background. I've run my own office, and part of that is for me to make money, I have to, whatever I conserve is money that is going to be in my pocket. And obviously, from my perspective, I'm going to apply those same principles to running the state's attorney's office. There's no question that the state's attorney's budget is limited. If you look at the budget for this year, it's increased. Most of that increase, though, is due to the awarding, if you will, of the retirement and that type of thing, and putting that in the budget. The only area that you can potentially attack, to be honest, is contractual services. Now, there can be any number of types of contractual services. You can pay for computer, or you can pay for computer programming, you can pay for whatever. And obviously, if you have experts that you need to pay for that. But the bottom line is, those areas that you can cut are those areas as far as the contractual services, and obviously from my perspective, I will also be aggressively going after forfeitures and whatnot. Those are the areas that the state's attorney's office can potentially get funds back. As far as fines and penalties and things like that, the state's attorney, or at this point in time, we have over almost $5 million in uncollected fines. Those are areas that you could potentially look at. And I know the state's attorney's office is somewhat aggressive as far as that's concerned. But if you look at the past 4 years, their uncollected fines have gone up immensely. So all of those areas are things that you have to look at. And it's my intent that I would.
Much of what happens in juvenile court occurs outside the public view. How would you assess the current state of the juvenile court system, and what, if any, changes would you make to it? Mr. Klahn.
In juvenile court, specifically with juvenile delinquency, the goals are much different than in contrast to adult felony court, adult misdemeanor court, or adult criminal court. The goal isn't so much on punishment. It's more for rehabilitation for the juvenile offender. With respect to the abuse and neglect cases, those are going to be areas where a parent has committed abuse and neglect, abandonment, and it needs to be dealt with regards to Department of Children and Family Services or other services on removing that child from a dangerous situation and having the parent engage in services to have that child return to home, hopefully. That's usually the goal. With respect to that, with respect to not a lot I would change. I would concentrate more upon working and collaborating with our service providers and really keeping an eye on the flow of each case when it deals with abuse and neglect. In regards to juvenile delinquency, that is our one hope, to try and change the path of a young person who's going down the wrong road. Providing mentorships could be important. I mean, every juvenile, you want to just get them to change their normal on what they're doing and move forward to live the happy and healthy life they deserve.
Well, obviously over the years I've been experienced with juvenile court, totally almost. As far as the state's attorney's office, if there was something to change, it would be my intent to change the fact that it's divided up between various people within the state's attorney's office. It would be my intent to have one state's attorney, when I say state's attorney, assistant state's attorney, handle juvenile court. First of all, it's kind of a specialty. There's no question about that. On the one side, you're dealing with abuse and neglect. You have many cases that are involved in that situation. That's why I've always said, as far as in my campaign, I want to concentrate on 3 areas as far as crimes: domestic violence, abuse of drugs, and the abuse of alcohol. These 3 areas have a great effect on families, and that's very, very difficult. I'll never forget, I was representing a child, and that child was not complaining, but obviously scared to death because her father, she hid under a chair as her father was beating her mother. Now, as far as that child's concerned, I think they're a collateral victim, if you will. Now, there's no quote-unquote crime created there, maybe disorderly conduct or something, but that's what the juvenile court looks at, and that's why it's so important to have someone specialized in that area. And the state's attorneys really have not done that over the years. Thank you.
Well, as I indicated earlier, juvenile court is very important in our society. As many of you know, juvenile court, there are 2 components to it: the abuse and neglect cases and the delinquency cases. The delinquency cases are similar to the criminal cases that we've been talking about all evening. The abuse and neglect is when a parent or guardian is not providing the appropriate care for that child. In response to the initial question, there's only so much that the state's attorneys can do. It's all governed by statute and law. There's so much we can disclose, if anything. It's a private proceeding to protect the children, to protect the people who are involved in the system. But with that being said, as state's attorney, I plan on focusing on the delinquency issue and trying to rehabilitate these young people rather than just graduating them to adult criminal court. How do we do that? Again, fashioning appropriate sentences or dispositions, as it's called in juvenile court, keeping in mind the funding that's available. Now, with the funding that's available, as you all maybe have heard or read in the papers, for example, LSSI has had to cut some funding. Juvenile abuse and neglect cases are really intertwined with contract agencies, DCFS. When the state's cutting their budgets, we have less to work with. So as a state's attorney, we need to be focused on the most efficient use of funds to get the job done. Also, we are very blessed in this county to have a very good CASA system, court-appointed special advocates. Mr. Downey is involved with that. It's a great system to be used, and I will intend to use that. Also, I intend to use a peer court to keep the kids out of court to resolve their problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Heroin abuse, and other forms of substance abuse have become significant problems area-wide. What is the state's attorney's role in combating these problems? And a related question, what is your opinion of the Safe Harbor program which has been initiated in Lee County? Mr. Downey.
Well, first of all, we do obviously have a heroin problem. And as far as the state's attorney's role in that, obviously if a person is arrested in regard to either possession or delivery of heroin, we have to prosecute. We had in this county drug court. And drug court is one of those courts that actually has been around for many, many years. There's approximately 40 people that are in that court at this point. Obviously it varies. And it's been fairly successful. It's a carrot and stick approach. The carrot is, we'll, in essence, dismiss the case if you successfully complete your program and what you're supposed to do. There's been success stories, and then there's been some stories that it hasn't been successful. But the thing is that it does, in fact, work. Now, the other question as far as the Safe Harbor program, the Safe Harbor program was just initiated. To be quite honest, I support it at this point, and when I say at this point, what I mean is, I'm assuming that that program will have some feedback, if you will. I noticed a story in the paper the other day where someone in the Safe Harbor program had gone into treatment, and subsequently they lost their bed, and then they started using again, and they went back into treatment. So these types of issues obviously have to be dealt with, and I have no problem at all with the Safe Harbor program. From the state's attorney's perspective, that's basically allowing discretion for the sheriff as well as law enforcement to allow for that program to happen. And I support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, right now, the heroin issue is a big issue in our community. As being involved in this type of business for the last 20 years, I've seen several changes. At one point, it was a big issue on cannabis. People using a lot of cannabis. There for a while, a lot of people were using cocaine. We've always had alcohol issues in our community. Some people argue that's a drug, some people argue it's not a drug. However, with all these substance abuse issues, we need to try to get it addressed. When I started, the big component was war on drugs. If you did drugs, you not only went to jail, you went to prison. A lot of us still support that. There's still some good theories on that. However, people are getting out of the penitentiary and still using drugs. So did that work? That question is still out there. As a state's attorney, it's our job to help enforce the laws, whether it be rehabilitation or whether it be incarceration. If you have a person that was caught with drugs for the first time and they're not violent, I would suggest, it would be my plan to put them in rehabilitation, put them back as a member of the society. If they've had 3, 4, or 5 drug busts and they've damaged people's property, hurt other people, no, then you shoot for punishment in the penitentiary. With regard to the Safe Passage program, I think it's great, it's worth a shot. If somebody wants to come into the police and say, I have a drug problem, they've taken that step. The bottom line is, and we all know back from Prohibition, until we can convince people not to put substances in their bodies, any type of drugs, alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, we're going to have these issues. But I think the state's attorney is critical to work with law enforcement to solve these problems. Thank you.
But now there's one clarification. Safe Harbor is a group that is dedicated to the support of addicts. The Safe Passage Initiative is an initiative that was created by our law enforcement agencies and the state's attorney's office. And what it is, it allows us to interact with an at-risk part of our community that's usually very elusive. And instead of, again, arresting individuals and putting in the revolving door of the criminal justice system, we encourage them, come to the police officers. Tell them you have a problem. We are going to assist you in getting into a treatment program. We are not out to arrest you. We are out to help people who have problems and want to get the help. Now, with respect to the other side of the coin, for drug dealers, people that bring that poison into this community, we are going to aggressively investigate you and prosecute you. And that will include asset forfeiture of all the financial gains you have from this criminal enterprise. And I'll tell you, many drug dealers going to prison, that's the cost of doing business for them. If you start taking the money that they receive from this criminal enterprise, well, the look on their faces is priceless. We are going to attack it from both ends. But with regards to people with a legitimate problem, we want to help them. Our drug court has been unbelievably successful. We have currently just over 30 members. We have 41 graduates. 99 people served since November of 2005 with a 55% graduation rate. Again, and the beauty part of it, it's a long program, but we have to be patient. We talk about some of these numbers of cases not getting closed. Well, they plead guilty, but the case is not completely sentenced or disposed of. So we have to have patience because going through the drug court program takes time. It'll take at least a year, if not longer. So we have to be patient for that.
The state's attorney possesses considerable discretion in deciding which cases to prosecute and how to prosecute them. What factors would you consider when exercising that discretion? Mr. Brozovich.
Thank you.
Well, as I stated in my opening statements, this is a critical job for a state's attorney when the case comes into the office. There are several factors that I have considered throughout my 20-plus years of experience. One, the person's background. Two, I look at the person, whether the crime was a dangerous crime. A violent criminal or violent crime that's committed against our citizens, I have no tolerance for. Also, I also look at what do I want to do with this case? Do I want to rehabilitate? Do I want to punish? A fourth component that I think is very important and sometimes gets overlooked is get the victim in there sooner than later. Find out what the victim wants. Now, granted, the victim doesn't get to drive the train, but if it's a family member or a close friend or an acquaintance, find out what the victim wants. Maybe the victim can give you some insight. Fifth, I also look what the law enforcement wants. The law enforcement, those are the people that are out there keeping us safe during the day and during the night. You may have, for example, a criminal damage of property. One person said, I'm sorry, I'll pay the restitution. The other person could be a complete jerk to the police officers. I look at all that because the police, they're going to tell you if this person was decent to them or not decent to them. Or the police will also tell you that they think this person's been involved in other things that we just haven't proved yet. So with regard to looking at a case, I think it's very important, and that's what I have to bring to the table as an experienced prosecutor. You look at a multiple facet of things. Basically, their criminal history, the type of person they are, the type of crime, your victim, you work with police. That's what I would do if I become your state's attorney. Thank you.
Prosecutorial discretion is one of our most sacred parts of American jurisprudence. With regards to making that decision on whether a case should be filed and prosecution should move forward, the prosecutor has to trust their head, their heart, and their gut. But most importantly is you communicate with the people that you work with. We have an amazing law enforcement team that I'm a part of here. Right now, our communication and cooperation is at an all-time high. Every law enforcement officer that works a case has to have a seat at that table. And I always say, whether it be working with a victim or a law enforcement officer, give them every opportunity to convince me I'm wrong. With respect to victims, I see some of our victim advocates in the crowd tonight, and I completely appreciate working with them because they bring so much perspective for us on victim sensitivity. Our goal in working with victims is to help them shed that skin of abuse, leave it behind, and become survivors. And that's what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. Because you prosecute a case, it goes to trial, you win, you might win, you might lose. But if you work with a victim and let them be empowered with the process, you're going to, and become a survivor, you win every time. Again, it's about communication with the people that you're there, but ultimately, your role as a prosecutor, and your number one rule is, you have a duty to do justice, with what you think is right. And that is what I've done for the last 3.5 years working in the Lee County State's Attorney's Office, and that's what I'll continue to do when I'm the next Lee County State's Attorney.
Well, when you talk about prosecutor discretion, on the front side, which is when the case comes in, the main thing you have to do, it really doesn't deal with discretion per se, it deals with whether or not you have a case. The prosecutor has to determine whether or not there's enough of a case there. Once they decide there is, then at that point in time, you're going to elect either to file or not file. Now, as far as filing, to be quite honest, if there's a case there, I most likely will file it. But the discretion I'm going to use is as far as what the sentence or that type of thing would be. But the front side deals with making sure there's a case. Now, if there's not a case, or if there's not enough, or if you need more, then obviously you need to go back to police and say, look, we need further evidence here, plain and simple. When a bad case is filed, it creates problems all the way down the line. And it's not my intent to create problems for anyone, plain and simple. Again, where the discretion comes in is when you're prosecuting that case, whether it be a juvenile case, whether it be a criminal case, whatever case you're involved in, that's where the discretion comes in. And as far as the dismissal or looking at victims' rights, obviously that's a concern. But for example, if the victim comes in and says, hey, they paid this restitution, I don't want to pursue this anymore, I would obviously give it some consideration and possibly dismiss it. That's where the discretion is. But again, on the front side, the question is whether or not there's a case. Thank you.
Should the state's attorney's relationship be with the state, county, and city law enforcement agencies? And how would you improve that relationship? Mr. Klahn.
The relationship between the state's attorney's office and law enforcement begins and ends with respect. Again, we're blessed to have an exceptional law enforcement team countywide here. And you're seeing collaboration and teamwork at an all-time high and unprecedented, and they're doing unprecedented things. Again, we'll go back to the Safe Passage Initiative. You look at JOG, the Joint Operations Group. We have now the Sheriff's Department, Dixon Police Department, Amboy Police Department working together, communicating, and they're firing on all pistons. And you know what? It's working here in Lee County. It's resulting in better investigations, better prosecutions, and a better community for us to live in. It's really hard to say how I could make this relationship better right now, because we might not always agree, but there is mutual respect there. And it really comes down to being available and doing the work. Police officers need to know that you're going to put in, as a prosecutor, the same effort that they're willing to put in. You have to be that checks and balances. If you don't feel you have enough to prove a case or you have probable cause with regards to it, then a prosecutor cannot file it. But it's been my experience, if you at least can justify to law enforcement your decisions, whether they agree with it or not, they're going to respect it. So again, it always begins and ends with respect. We are just blessed here to have the very best police officers you could ever ask. They are honest, they are dedicated, and they are intelligent. And I always would want a group of intelligent people who are not afraid to disagree with me to be a part of my team. Thank you.
Well, I agree with Mr. Klahn that we have a very good group of police officers in Lee County. I used to be a police officer. I was a police officer for almost 8 years. So I know what it takes to be a police officer. I've been in those situations where police have been in. I've investigated many, many types of crimes. I've been in situations where you stop people and, you have to remove a weapon or you're attacked or whatever. So I've been there, so I know what it's like. As far as keeping those relationships, we do have a good relationship with so I kind of disagree with the question. As far as keeping that relationship, I intend to keep it. I intend to go ahead and work with the police. But again, there's a checks and balances here. And when the case comes to me, I'm going to decide whether or not there's enough evidence there. And all of those factors. And that's very, very important. You can't quote unquote rubber stamp what is going on as far as the police are concerned. And Mr. Klahn is correct. As long as you, and again, I've worked with police all the years I've been an attorney. I have many friends that are police. So I know how to work with them. I've treated them with respect, and they've treated me with respect. So I believe that if I become state's attorney, we will have a good working relationship, and that is important. Thank you.
Thank you. I also agree with my colleagues. It's critical that the state's attorney's relationship with law enforcement be professional and respectful. I have also done that in my career as a prosecutor. We do have a great team of law enforcement in Lee County, from the state police, to the county police, to the local police, and then involving with the Secretary of State police I've worked with. I've also worked with federal agents. You have to work together. I have also been known, and many of you in here know this, that I get called out 3 o'clock in the morning for a search warrant, I go out. Sometimes I've gone to the scene. That's cooperation with the police. I think, as Mr. Klahn and Mr. Downey stated, we have an excellent relationship with the police. I want to make it better. I will promise to the people of Lee County and the law enforcement here tonight that if in fact I'm your state's attorney, me or my assistants will also be answering the questions, those 2 o'clock in the morning phone calls. We want to help. We want to be a part of the team to try to make our community safer. At the same time, as state's attorney, the state's attorney must be independent. The state's attorney cannot be a rubber stamp for everything that comes in the door. Sometimes you have to put up the stop sign and say, well, I don't have enough evidence here to prosecute this case. I cannot go forward. Sometimes there's a disagreement with regard to, well, there's probable cause. But probable cause is not enough for the case to proceed. You have to have proof beyond reasonable doubt. I had the experience to look at a case and make that determination. Well, when that happens then, you work with police and say, look, I don't have enough. We need more. It's very healthy to agree to disagree. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I can look at a case, and I want to help the police. We've got a great team in this community, and I want to keep it that way. So my pledge to you is to work with law enforcement and keep this community a safe community with the work of the police officers. Thank you.
Thank you. This is our last question. Please identify your top priorities for the office if elected. Mr. Downey.
Well, my top priorities are, basically, I want to resolve pending cases. If you look at the past record, if you will, when the present state's attorney's office came into play, there was pending cases of almost 205. As of March 1st of this year, there's over 328. Granted, there's been more felonies filed, but that's a massive amount of pending cases. It's my position that these cases that have languished for years and years and years have to be resolved, plain and simple. My other priority is that I intend to focus on those areas of law or crimes that mostly affect families. And when I say families, I'm referring to everything, well, as far as families are concerned, the ones that I see the biggest problem are domestic violence, the illegal use of alcohol, and the unlawful or the illegal use of drugs. Now, where those affect families, and I'm not going to talk about any quote-unquote pending cases here in the county, but everyone knows the Shealy case. That was a drug-induced series of murders. And that occurred over our county. So that affected, that illegal use of drugs affected what was going on. So those are the types of things that we have to attack. And we are attacking. We have the drug court that's been going on. We have safe harbor, or safe passage as the case may be. But the bottom line is, those are the things that I'm going to focus on. Thank you.
Well, my top priority is what everybody's doing now, and I will continue to do that. I want to protect our citizens from violent criminals. That's key. And my part in that equation is to make sure that quality cases are brought to me, to make sure that quality cases are prosecuted, and to make sure that violent offenders have the appropriate sentences. With doing that, for a quality prosecution, I will also focus on a quality office with quality personnel, with the funds available. I will make a priority to attempt to obtain further programs and further fundings. There are grants out there. With the lack of the normal funding from the state, federal, and county levels, I intend to look for more grants to help produce this. For example, we are partially funded by the Department of Corrections because we have a prison that helps fund a state's attorney or assistant state's attorney's position. I will also try to obtain monies to further that. Further that by meaning that trying to get perhaps special attorneys involving drug cases if the money is available. My priority is to run an efficient office and to get the biggest bang for the buck. Also a priority is to work with the county departments and the county board because we all got to work together. And by working together, we have a better county and it'll serve the people of Lee County better. And that is my goal, to make it a better county for you and I to live in. Thank you.
Unfortunately, in Lee County in the last several years, we've dealt with an exceptional number of death-related cases in comparison to other counties our size and our neighboring counties. In the last few years, and since the current administration began office, at different levels, we've had 17 death-related cases. These cases take an exceptional amount of time to investigate and also prosecute. The last thing a prosecutor ever wants to do is rush forward with a case, a mistake is made, it comes back on an appeal, and you have to do it again. With respect to the number of pending felony cases, the number you're not hearing is there are actually 142 right now active felony warrants. Of the duties and powers of the state's attorney, it's not included as bounty hunter. So when law enforcement find these people that have active warrants, their cases will move forward. But again, we always have to try and get better with efficiency. One of my goals is going to be, I will be the only candidate that will have advanced education and training on the new computer system software for case management that the county has purchased and is set to launch in September. This will be able to allow us to be much more efficient and hold the assistant state's attorneys accountable for their caseloads by drawing different reports and keeping track of our cases with an electronic or digital central nervous system. In addition to that, I would like to see the expansion of our alternative courts, which will now include a veterans court that we hope to get started in September to deal with veterans-related issues, nonviolent veteran offenders who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, serious head trauma, and depression. In addition to that, I would like to see some continuity in the office. I am the only remaining assistant state's attorney from when the current administration started. So having state's attorneys that are there longer will provide more efficiency and effectiveness for the office. Thank you.
We have now reached the point in our program for closing statements. By previous lot, it was determined the order, and we'll begin with Mr. Klahn.
As we close out this debate, I want to quickly summarize how my experiences have prepared me to become the next Lee County State's Attorney. Every candidate here tonight has touted their experience in practicing law. The definition of experience is active participation in activities leading to the accumulation of knowledge and skill. The key words to this is active participation. I am the only candidate who has been actively engaged in Lee County as a prosecutor of homicide cases, many of which have resulted in maximum sentences. I have worked relentlessly to secure convictions in special victims cases, and I am seeking criminal prosecution of a number of drug dealers, which also involves asset forfeiture proceedings. My experience includes being the only candidate who has been called upon to actively manage the state's attorney's office in a time of crisis. I am the only candidate to take on the challenge of both prosecuting major cases and serving as lead civil attorney at the same time. The job does not only include the conviction to prosecute criminal offenders. You have to have compassion too. Compassion to help people that are suffering from substance abuse and mental health issues. And compassion again to assist victims shed that skin of abuse, leave it behind, and become survivors. I am actively involved in working with groups such as the YWCA and Shining Star in regards to working with our victims and really empowering them to be a part of our process and the decisions that we make. Over the past 3 years, I had the extreme pleasure to be actively involved in the creation of a great law enforcement team here in Lee County. I'm the only candidate to join this team in establishing an unprecedented approach to community policing and prosecution through the expansion of our alternative courts and the creation of the Safe Passage Initiative. We have investigated and prosecuted an exceptional amount of death-related cases. We have contributed to educating the community through our involvement in the prison group and presenting information on scams and other crimes against the elderly. Beyond the experiences that I'm actively engaged in is being in-house legal counsel to the Lee County Board and Lee County departments and employees on a number of complex civil-related issues. It is through these experiences that I have been able to form many working relationships with the members of the leadership team, whether it be within the county departments and county board or our law enforcement team. I'm honored to have the endorsements of county board members, including Chairman Rick Ketchum, Board Member Tom Kitson, Marilyn Schipper, Judy Truckenbrod, Doug Farster, Bob Olson, and many other different county board members. I also have the endorsement of county department heads and our law enforcement officers here today. I would always say, don't just take my word for it on the work that I've done. Ask the people that have worked with me on a day-to-day basis. In conclusion, I want to say that I have the right experience and the active participation to be the next Lee County State's Attorney. If you elect me, I will work tirelessly with our law enforcement team to serve and protect this community. Thank you all for being here, and God bless you all.
I want to thank you all for being here, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you. I feel that you should vote for me based on the following reasons. First, I'm a former police officer. I've been there. So I know when the police go out and make an arrest, I know what they've gone through, so I've experienced that. Secondly, if you look at my background, I'm the most experienced attorney here. I've been an attorney for 32 years. I've been an attorney here in Lee County for all of those years. I've actually been employed by Lee County for close to 30 years if you multiply or add to my experience as an assistant state's attorney, assistant public defender, as well as the guardian ad litem here in Lee County. I have tried as lead attorney either hundreds or thousands of cases in state, federal, and appellate jurisdictions. As far as becoming state's attorney, one of the things, and I know Mr. Klahn has indicated that he's more attuned to this program that's coming to the state's attorney's office. Obviously he is, because he's the only one in the office at this point. But what's coming to the state's attorney's office in 2 years, or by the end of 2 years, is there's been a mandate that you have electronic filing in Illinois by 2018 by the Supreme Court. I'm the only one that has dealt with the federal jurisdiction that has dealt with and has had electronic filing for years, and I've dealt with that. Now, obviously, I don't know how it's coming down the pike, because the only county at this point is DuPage that's dealing with that, but I've dealt with it, so obviously, I have it, hands up there. As far as my background, I've had my own law office. I know how to run a state's attorney's office because I've run my own law office. So I'm the best qualified candidate when you look at everything. And again, it's my intent to look at those things and deal with those things that mostly affect families. And I commit to you that I will, in fact, decrease the backlog of cases. And again, it's my feeling that those have to be resolved. They've been languishing for years, and they have to be resolved. Thank you.
I too would like to, again, thank all our sponsors. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Matt and Mike for joining us up here tonight and discussing the issues before you, the citizens of Lee County. I am the only career prosecutor that you will see and you see tonight. I have been doing this stuff for over 20 years. I have 20 years of prosecution from the ordinance violations, traffic, misdemeanors, DUIs, and felonies. I currently try felonies and deal with a caseload of over 150 felonies myself. I've been doing felonies for the last several years, and I have the experience to continue to do that in Lee County. As both of my colleagues have indicated tonight, this is about experience. Our life is about experience. Think of your own lives at home. When you look for a doctor, do you look for an experienced doctor or one with no experience? When you seek a plumber, when you seek somebody to fix your car, we all seek persons with experience. I'm your candidate for that. I've been doing this for 20 years plus. I not only have been doing it on the state level, I've also, as I've indicated, I've prosecuted ordinances for the cities of Dixon, Franklin Grove, and Paw Paw. I currently also work as legal counsel for the Dixon Park District. I prosecute their ordinances as well. I have a whole arrangement of experiences that I've worked with. Not just prosecuting cases, reviewing cases, working with police officers, working with victims, working with everybody available in the state's attorney's office. That includes the department heads. That also includes the county board. There's many aspects and many issues that the state's attorneys have to deal with. I've dealt with those. In addition, as your candidate for state's attorney, I will pledge you a number of things. I will, as I've indicated, I will provide quality prosecution to the citizens of Lee County. I will vigorously prosecute those people who commit violent offenses. I will also vigorously prosecute those people who prey on our senior citizens and our disabled people. They need a helping hand. I am their helping hand. I will work with victims of crime throughout the whole prosecution of the case, not just at trial time. I will also work at collecting the outstanding fines and restitution that is owed the people of Lee County. I will focus on restitution. Why? Because it's the victims. It's their money that has been taken. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here tonight is a decision. Who will be your next prosecutor? I am the prosecutor that has integrity, independence, and I want to seek justice, and I want to be your state's attorney. Thank you.
What would you say is the number one aspect that could be improved at the state's attorney's office?
Well, having that new computer system and kind of a digital electronic central nervous system, I think would improve efficiencies as far as running reports and on cases. I think that would be the number one thing that we could improve on. And it will, as it's set to launch in September, and I'll have advanced training on that in August.
What would you say is the one aspect that could be best improved at the state's attorney's office?
Well, as I said, you have to resolve the pending cases. There's just a ton of them, and you need to resolve them, plain and simple.
Now, what would you say is the one aspect that could be improved upon at the state's attorney's office?
Well, yeah, I want to improve on everything. We're very fortunate of our community. What I would improve on, as I've said tonight, I want to make it more efficient. I want to review cases more carefully, so that therefore I can have an idea, do I want to focus on rehabilitation, or do I want to focus on punishment? I think that's a critical element. And basically my main focus is trying to protect the citizens of Lee County.